All right. I'll do a quick welcome again, Mary, since it's been a few weeks since everybody's been together, and anybody that's following us on YouTube will notice that our dates are a few weeks, but we've had a few interruptions in schedules and travel that's gone on from a variety of folks, but we're back together again. It's the 15th, I think, of July. And glad to be back online with everybody and to be recording so that we can put this out on the YouTube channel, and happy that everybody's here. So we're going to turn this over to Mary for kicking it off, continuing on with our more knowledge is more glory theme. But Mary, go ahead.
Well, let's start with a prayer. Let's open up with our prayer.
All right.
Shall we?
Yes. Name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Come, divine will. Come to reign in me. With this one act, I want to embrace my entire day. I want to embrace every thought, every word, every action, and all the people I meet. The things I have to do, all my duties, I want all to be in your most holy will. I want to put my whole day right from this instant in your most holy will, so that should I be distracted, or should there be things I forget, they may all be done in your will. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and enkindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. Remember your congregation, which you have possessed from the beginning. O Lord, hear my prayer, and let my cry come unto you. The Lord be with you, and with your spirit. Let us pray. O God, who has taught the hearts of the faithful by the light of the Holy Spirit, grant us in the same Spirit to be truly wise and to ever rejoice in his holy consolation. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit.
And then, all right, Jesus, life of my soul, beat of my heart, love of my life. As we read these lessons within, which is a new heaven and a new creation, a new divine life of your beauty and your bountiful self, I pray you, my love, to fuse yourself into me, that I may become the wisdom of God, to receive in my mind all the truths you want me to embrace, that I may become the divine love with which to embrace them, that I may become the divine sorrow to grieve over all the refusals of these sublime truths. O Jesus, open my mind and heart in the very depths of my soul, that I may be consumed with your own ardors of love, to receive all possible goods of our Heavenly Father's will, that not only I, but all may come to know him, that all may come to know him in, through, and with you, dear Jesus, in the love of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
So, as many people around the table and those who are joining us, we've been reading the readings for years, some even decades. And we believe the writings, we believe the truths. We experience stuff internally. We know that we're living it. But the outside world, we don't look any different, right? My husband doesn't see me as, he knows I'm different spiritually, but he doesn't know I'm still his wife. And that's how, God has placed this gift amongst us, is that it's an internal gift. It's not external, it's internal. This gift is moving from the sacramental life of Christ and the virtuous life of Christ into the divine life of Christ. It is into living the way the Holy Family lived. The Holy Family did not live the sacramental life of Christ or the virtues, for they were virtues themselves. We know that every time, when we did our session on fuse, every time you fuse, it is equivalent to receiving God in the Eucharist, only it's greater because you get to love him back, whereas the host is just a particle of bread and it can't love him back, but you can. So you can fuse as many times during the day as you want. You start off with your prevenient act like we just prayed, and then throughout the day, you just remind yourself that all your acts are divine acts, that you want your acts to be divine acts, divine lives. And it is the same as receiving Jesus in the Eucharist. That's why it's not the sacramental life, it is the divine life that we are living. It's a new creation. It's a new divine life of beauty in Jesus' bountiful self. God is the generator who generates Christ constantly in all acts. The Trinity is never separated, and they live and reign inside of you. And at any point during the day, you can be hearing from God the Father, God the Holy Spirit, or God the Word. It's an incredible gift. But to try to explain it to somebody in the terrestrial, you have to go down several elevator levels to try to explain to the terrestrial something so celestial. So he gave us these 36 volumes to tell us how to live in his kingdom. Not only how, but and what to expect and what to do when you're living in the kingdom. I just got back from Spain. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country. We just did one night landing in Madrid and our final night in Madrid. But other than that, we pretty much stayed in the northern part of Spain, in the smaller towns where all the apparitions of our Blessed Mother were. Very peaceful, serene. And then we got a chance to go to Garabandal where Greg Dunn was there and a lot of people from Ireland. So we got a little Irish retreat. And it was more of an experience than it was learning something new. But the experience is, if I were to sum up the experience, just complete peace. But to travel in a foreign country that wasn't a tour, so we were just there by ourselves, rented a car by ourselves, and to literally let God direct your trip is how God wants you to live every single day of your life. Doesn't just have to be a trip to Spain, but how you're supposed to live your life, how you're supposed to live every moment of your life. God, where do you want to go today? What do you want to do today? What should I learn today? And you learn, as we've mentioned in many cynicals, that your whys that you used to ask have turned into thank yous, right? You don't ask why, you just say thank you, because everything comes from God. So our the I don't know what word to say, goal, mission, purpose for these writings, well, they're not mine, that's Jesus's, of course. But the more knowledge you attain here on earth is the knowledge you bring to heaven with you. And more knowledge means a higher place in glory in heaven. And that is not foreign to our Catholic faith. We have always known that. I think it was St. Teresa of Lisieux who says, it's like a thimble or a glass of water. Both are full, and the person who just has a thimble isn't jealous of the person who has a glass of water. And the person who's glass of water doesn't look at the person who's only full just with a thimble. You're in heaven. So there's no, jealousy or so forth. But the water in the glass or the water in the thimble represents the knowledge you attained here on earth. And so, as we know, Jesus gave 36 volumes to Luisa Picaretta. He gave everything you need to know is in these volumes. There's nothing, he didn't forget anything. So I still kind of laugh when people, are offering us other books to read. And I'm like, he didn't leave anything out. He spent many years with Louisa while she was in her bed and gave her all the knowledges that we needed to know to live on earth as it is in heaven. So we just that's the theme of this lesson that we're probably going to spend a few more weeks on. More knowledge, more glory. And everyone internally ask yourself, you can know it. You know it now. You have more knowledge of heaven on earth, and you can reflect on how you've changed, how you're full of peace, how you're full of love, how your desire for peace and love is extended to all creatures. And that came from the knowledges. It came from I know it came from the knowledges because, we've been attending Mass. We've been attending the sacramental life. We've lived the sacramental life of Christ. We've lived the virtues. But yet we would still have a tendency of not being able to see Christ in all souls, or lose our patience, or lose our obedience, etc., etc. And it wasn't until we said yes to the gift that we started growing in the likeness of God, and therefore changing into not only the substance. Remember, hold on, my nose. Remember when he tells us in volume 2, the first reading, he said, God is faith, faith is God. Well, we know in Hebrews, faith is the substance of God. So when we were living the sacramental life of Christ, the Eucharist, the sacramental life of Christ, and we were living the virtues, we were able to individually live the attributes of God. Like we received his mercy, we received his peace, we would receive his glory. But now that you live the divine life of Christ, you are the substance of God. Faith is God, and God is faith. Hope is God, and love is God. And the greatest of these is love, because once you reach heaven, you don't need to have faith that you're going to get there, or even hope that you're going to get there. You are. So therefore, the greatest of these is love. So it's not about living off the attributes of Christ, but becoming God, into opening up the gifts and expounding the gifts upon all creation. So you expand. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And so if I'm not, just please laugh at me. You take those gifts, you take his mercy, and you spread it out amongst all souls. You take his love and you spread it out amongst all souls, excluding nobody. You take his peace and you give it to all, uh, excluding nobody, past, present, and future. That's a knowledge that you wouldn't have had until you came into the living in the divine will and reading these writings. And when you've done that for them on earth, that would be, more glory, more knowledge, more glory. More knowledge, more glory. We know what he's suffered in his passion, not just in his humanity, but in his divinity. We know that he suffered it from the moment of his incarnation. We know that he lived his life repairing and redoing every single act of every single human being, requiting God for every act in creation. And then he gave us his spirit to come down and form the church and to let us live in the virtues and sacramental life. And now the Trinity has come to dwell inside of us, to return us to the state of Adam, not even right before the fall, but right before the test. Because you've been tested, you've said yes. That's knowledge. That's knowledge. More knowledge, more glory. So forgive me, I don't remember the last reading we read last time. Hopefully John remembers. And
yeah, we're on October 15th, 1926.
Thank you.
Is the current one. And just to add in, Mary did a nice job describing kind of where we're all at in this. But I like the visual of the glass and the thimble, is that whether we are a glass and a thimble, or a thimble, depending upon how long we've been in this and how much we've learned and how much we're on our way to learning, we're all still filled, and we are possessing. That the likeness is the possession of God. That in a variety of the readings that if you're reading by date this past week, he used the term possession a lot. It's to possess God, and it's the substance that she talked about. It is the likeness of God, which is what is the outcome of these knowledges, and as we all know, we are in that realm of possessing God, and the natural result of that is exactly what she talked about. Spreading peace, spreading love, and just as a natural way, not because I need to do this or I need to be peaceful. It's just the way that you become, and that is a great effect of what this brings to all of us, no matter where we are. We're all on our way. Okay, so October 15th, 1926. Everybody there?
October
15. October 15, 1926.
And if it helps you guys at the table, all you have to do in the email that I sent out in the middle of it, just click it and all the writings are there. And at the front top page is like the table of contents. Click on the date, it'll take you right to it. I try to make it easy so that you don't have to search from all the writings.
Yeah, and if you're an old man like me, you just print it all out. So
There you go.
here in front of you. So if you're a paper guy versus a digital guy or gal. Okay. Anybody like to read this? I'm happy to. Mary, saving your voice maybe a little bit to interject.
Yeah, Mary doesn't want to read.
All right. You want me to read it? Sure. Go ahead.
As much divine will as one has enclosed on earth, so much happiness will he have in heaven. Continuing my usual round in the supreme will, I was saying to myself, my Jesus, your will embraces and encloses everything. And I, in the name of the first creature that came out of your creative hands, up to the last one that will be created, intend to repair for all the oppositions of the human wills made against yours, and to take within me all the acts of your adorable will, which the creatures have rejected, in order to return them all with love and adoration, in such a way that there may be no act of yours without the correspondence of one act of mine, so that in finding my little act as though bilocated in each one of your acts, you may be satisfied and may come to reign triumphantly upon earth. Is it perhaps not true that your eternal fiat wants to find in the human acts the support on which to dominate? Therefore, in each one of your acts, I offer you mine as the field on which you can lay your kingdom.
Can you stop right there for a second? I mean, she repeated back to him exactly what is happening as we are operating and possessing in the divine will as it relates to acts, and how those acts were intended to be moved versus how they actually were moved. And we use the term repair, reorder, redo, regenerate, but in the end, it's taking the acts from the first creature up to the last one, and to repair for all the oppositions of the human wills that were made against how God intended for those acts to come. And that puts the seal, that puts the divine seal on them, and so that those acts now have life and they live and they are eternal. Go ahead.
Now, while I was thinking and saying this, my always lovable Jesus moved in my interior and told me, little daughter of my will, it is just, it is necessary, it is a right of both sides, both yours and of my will, that whoever is a child of my will follow the multiplicity of the acts of my will, and that my will receive them into its acts. A father would be unhappy if he did not feel his son at his side in order to be followed by his son in his acts. Nor would the son feel loved by the father if, putting him aside, the father would not let him be followed by his son. Therefore, daughter of my will and newborn in it means exactly this, to follow all its acts as a faithful daughter. In fact, you must know that in creation, my will entered the field of action in the human acts of the creature. But in order to act, it wants the act of the creature within its own. so as to carry out its work and be able to say, my kingdom is in the midst of my children and right in the intimate places of their acts. In fact, as much as the creature takes of my will, so much do I extend my kingdom in her, as she extends her kingdom in my will. But according to how much she lets herself be dominated in her acts, in this way she expands her boundaries in my kingdom. And I give, and she takes even more joy, more happiness, more goods, and more glory.
Just stop it once again. Yeah. Does anybody have a thought on this?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Go ahead, Mary.
No,
You
go Hayes. I want to hear you first.
Okay, well, I just think that for love to be love, we have to reciprocate love. God wants to feel love. He wants to feel our participation in everything that is human and also divine. That's what I get from this reading.
Okay.
In fact, you must know that in creation, my will entered the field of action of the human acts of the creature. But in order to act it once the act of the creature within its own, I don't know why I'm rereading this. I'm just going back to my head. So Jesus, the minute that you've said yes, you truly said yes, you gave your fiat. You're not playing around. I've given my fiat. This is all I want. The fear of God is entered into you where you can't even imagine doing one act with it not being in the divine will. True fear, because that's the leads you to wisdom. Fear of God leads you to wisdom. Jesus is so you've gone through the purging and the illumination, which is the Holy Spirit, purges and illuminates you. Then through the Holy Spirit and our Blessed Mother, Jesus is incarnated in you. And he incarnated, he's born, and then he grows. He's the kingdom inside of you, and he expands and grows and grows and grows inside of you on how much you want to take of his will, which if you've given your fiat and you want to live in the divine will, you're taking it all. And he gives it to you sip by sip by sip by sip and lets you keep growing and growing and growing. It says in scripture, just to remind you in scripture, that Jesus grew in wisdom. So are you. He's growing inside of you in the divine will and wisdom. He is growing. So he's been incarnated, he's been born, and now he is expanding inside of you. He's the kingdom. His acts inside of you is his kingdom. And then he comes to reign within his kingdom. So you take all of his acts. As Mel has said earlier, you take all of his acts. They're inside of you. So all you can expand on, as Hayes said, is love. It's all you can give out is love, because all his acts were love. All of his acts were mercy. All of his acts were peace. And that's what is coming out of you. So you've given your fiat. He's incarnated inside of you. You have said no to no longer doing your human acts. You've said yes to living in the divine will, so that all your acts will be of the divine order. Therefore, at that moment, you have been immaculately conceived. It's the same with what happened to our Blessed Mother during her immaculate conception. She saw acts done in the human will and acts done in the divine will. She chose the divine will, immaculately conceived. That is why you are a newborn. And you will never go back to your old way. He tells you that. He protects you. All of his acts protect you. All of the Blessed Mother's acts protect you. So the kingdom growing inside of you is all of his acts, and then he comes to fully reign in us when the kingdom, I'm probably saying that wrong, I'm probably saying too many words, but it's his acts. He's growing inside of you. He's the kingdom. He's the king of the kingdom. My kingdom is in the midst of my children and right in the intimate place of their acts. In fact, as much as the creature takes of my will, so much do I extend my kingdom in her, and she extends her kingdom in my will, but according to how much she lets herself be dominated in her acts. So the question you need to ask is, how much are you allowing his will to dominate you? And I can answer for me, I don't want anything else but your domination. And that's why he says when that happens, you become the dominion over everything. Because who is the one who's dominating? Not your human will,
Yeah.
but the divine will. She expands her boundaries in my kingdom, and I give, and she takes ever more joy, more happiness, more goods, and more glory. In fact, it is established that in the celestial fatherland they will receive as much glory, beatitude, and happiness for as much of my will as they have enclosed in their souls on earth.
Another thing is that I think that we can see ourselves in the mass, in that we are the drop of water in the chalice. And therefore we cannot be seen anymore, and only it is him that lives. And the mass and all of redemption was leading up to the gift of the divine will. In we are, yeah, exactly, like the threefold of creation, the beginning of life, and then redemption, and now sanctification. But I think of the ocean when I think of God, and then I think, who am I in the ocean? I'm just a drop. So therefore, everything that's going on in the ocean can't be done by one drop. It can only be done by the magnificence of God. And therefore, I cease to exist. I am his acts are my acts are his acts, but I lay down my acts to his, because I'm nothing. He created me, but I am nothing next to him.
Hank.
So I just want to I'm sorry, Mel. Just one thing, Haynes. The era of redemption was the 33 years that Christ lived on earth. The era of sanctification started with this when the sanctifier came. And he tells us in the writings that the tree of sanctification is fully bloomed. It's got the fruits. And therefore, the gift of living in the divine will, that era is what we're entering into. So
Right.
I just wanted to,
Yeah,
because
it's been here.
right. Well,
we just
right, with Louisa.
Yeah, right.
With Louisa, it was given to Louisa that we now can take the fruits. We can take the fruits by saying yes to living in the fiat, and taking the seeds and spreading the seeds. And the seeds are the attributes, right? Attributes of fruit: peace, glory, mercy, love. I don't want to say love, because love is actually the substance of God. But I don't, because that can get confusing. Because I always said, people like, well, they're still in redemption. But Jesus tells us in the writings, redemption was 33 years.
Mhm.
Everybody was redeemed when he died on the cross. The sanctifier came, and we entered into the era of sanctification. That's why we entered into the era of the sacramental life of Christ and into the virtues.
All as a way to get to this point when he decided
Yes.
that Louisa, his time with Louisa, and time standpoint was now back in the late 1800s. What I was going to say, one add on to what Haynes was talking about, is there's in the fusion, I'll call it, of that drop of water in the sea, that drop of water being my will in the sea of the divine will. Think about what happens. That water, that drop of me gets dispersed, and it's in that the immensity of that sea. But there's two things that happen. That drop of water that was me, that was my will, is by virtue of fusing in with the divine will, it becomes part of every other drop in the water. And so that I now become part of every other drop in the water, and every other part of the water is in me. So that is what occurs, and that's how we are able to do rounds and to be able to access acts, if you will, of all others, is because they are all in us and we are all in them. And that took a little bit of while for me to kind of, in my mind at least, figure out that relationship of fusion and actually entering into the divine will. And it is so huge, because you think of a sea, but it's eternal. There's no beginning or end to it. But yet we, by virtue of operating in it and possessing God, we become part of it, and all of it becomes part of us too.
And we can take that further, Mel, that the sea is all of humanity. It's every human being that we walk the earth with is the sea of the divine will. And in order to bring the divine will to all the souls that are asleep to this is done through our fusing on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a minute by minute basis. And then we are the drop into all of humanity becoming alive with the magnificence of the divine will.
Okay, George?
In fact, it is established that in the celestial fatherland, they will receive as much glory, beatitudes, and happiness for as much of my will as they have enclosed in their souls on earth. Their glory will be measured by that very will of mine, which their souls will possess. Nor will they be able to receive more, because their capacity and wideness is formed by that very divine will, which they have done and possessed while living on earth. And even if my generosity wanted to give more, they would lack the space to contain it, and it would overflow outside. Now, my daughter, of all that my will has established to give to creatures for all its acts, they have taken little. They have known little until now, because its kingdom has not only not been known, but not even possessed. Therefore, in heaven, it cannot give all its complete glory, or all the joys and happiness it possesses, because it finds itself in the midst of children who are incapable and of little stature. This is why it awaits the time of its kingdom with great love and yearning. This is why it awaits the time of its kingdom with great love and yearning, to have its total dominion and to give from its fiat everything to everything it had established to give to the creatures. Therefore, forming children who are capable of receiving all of its goods, only because of these children, the children of the kingdom of my will the glory of all the blessed be completed in the celestial fatherland, because they have enclosed what my will wanted, giving it free field of action and of dominion. Therefore, they will have the essential glory, because they will have the capacity and the space in order to contain it. Through them, the others will have the accidental glory, and altogether they will enjoy the complete glory and the full happiness of my will. So the kingdom of the supreme fiat will be the full triumph of heaven and earth.
For guys like John and I, that reading there's a technical aspect, if you want to call it that, of what happens with the divine will and what the children of the divine will bring to heaven. And because he says, if all that my will is established to give to the creatures of all its act, they have taken little. They have known little until now, because its kingdom has not only not been known, but not even possessed. Therefore, in heaven, it cannot give all of its complete glory or all the joys and happiness it possesses, because it finds itself in the midst of children who are incapable and of little stature, because they have not known the divine will up until this point in time. And they have taken with them a small component of what the divine will and the glory that comes with it. This is why it awaits its time of kingdom with great love and yearning, to have its total dominion and to give from its fiat everything it had established to give to the creatures. So all the acts that God had established in the beginning, which we know the prime act was established in the beginning, all of those acts, as Mary said, they've come to fruition. The fruits are there by virtue of Jesus and Mary and now Louisa having redone. The fruits are there, and we call those fruits the whatever the act provides that God wanted it to provide, and the dewfall. We talked about the end result of that is dewfall. But only because of these children, the children of the kingdom of my will the glory of all the blessed be complete in the celestial fatherland. So by redoing Acts, that total glory that and love that came from God and the establishment of those acts gets turned around and presented back. And it's only the children of the divine will that can do that, because they are possessing God, and we are in the acts, and we are repairing the words that we know that happens when we are making our rounds. Because they enclosed they have enclosed what my will wanted, giving it free field of action and dominion. Therefore, they will have the essential glory, because they will have the capacity and the space in order to contain it. So the glory that was initially intended is possessed because children of the divine will possess that glory by the children of the divine will. But because that now is being given back to God, those in heaven, he calls it the accidental glory. The others will have the accidental glory, so they are showered by it, and together then everybody gets to experience the full glory. But there's the technical. As I read that, I feel and kind of take it in from the technical side of what God is causing to happen here by virtue of the operating through children of the divine will. That's, anybody else got a different thought on that, please. Love to hear it, but that's, you guys know that when I read these things, I kind of take it from the planning and the technical and the order side. Okay, George.
Now I was thinking to myself, in the Our Father, our Lord teaches us to pray, your will be done. Why does he now say that he wants us to live in it? And Jesus, always benign, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, your will be done, which I taught in the Our Father means that everyone was to pray that they might at least do the will of God.
Do the will of God. As Mary mentioned earlier, the virtues and the attributes, the image in the context of image and likeness.
This is for all Christians and for all times. Nor can anyone call himself a Christian if he does not dispose himself to do the will of the celestial Father. But you have not thought of the other note, which comes immediately after, on earth as it is in heaven. On earth as it is in heaven means to live in the divine will. It means to pray that the kingdom of my will may come on earth in order to live in it. In heaven, they not only do my will, but they live in it. They possess it as their own thing, and as their own kingdom. If they did, but not possessed it. If they did it, but not possessed it, their happiness would not be full, because true happiness begins in the depth of the soul. To do the will of God does not mean to possess it, but to be submitted to its commands. To live in it, instead, is possession. Therefore, in the Our Father, in the words, your will be done, is a prayer that all may do the supreme will, and on the earth as it is in heaven, that man may return into that will from which he came, in order to reacquire his happiness, the lost goods, and the possessions of his divine kingdom.
That's a great reading.
Finally, we got to a great reading.
Like,
So it's funny after every synagogue.
that's a great reading. That was a great reading. Yeah, they're all
Not be great.
they're all
when you're
great
studying this stuff.
But he's pretty, in this last section here, he's pretty strong in that distinction between, he uses the word live in it, in, as we know, in both directions a lot of times when he's talking to her. But to live in it is, or to do it is to be subservient as a slave, because he does make the distinctions between slaves and heirs as well. But to operate in the divine will means to possess it, that it is it is, as Mary talked at the very beginning here, it is the substance. It is, you become the substance
Do you feel
Uh,
it? Okay.
by grace, obviously, rather than by nature, which we know that, but nonetheless, that is the intention. That's where he's trying to, through the context of redemption and sanctification, is to bring everybody back to. Any other thoughts on this one? Okay, then let's move on to the next reading, which is in volume 20 as well. And it is November the 2nd, 1926. So November 2, 1926. November 2, 1926.
Mel, I can try to read.
Okay.
Okay, is everybody there? All right, hiding our acts in the acts of the celestial mama. How these stand in for her. How redemption will no longer serve as food for the sick, but as food for the healthy. I continued my living in the divine fiat, and while doing my acts in it, I absorbed light, which, in reflecting itself, made as many threads of light come out, which formed a net of light that extended over the earth in order to catch the creatures. Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, every time you go around in my will, you take more light in order to form the net with which to catch the creatures. And do you know what this net is? My knowledges. The more knowledges I manifest to you about the eternal fiat, the more I dispose and enlarge the net in order to catch the souls who must live in my kingdom. And this disposes the Lord to give them to you. When you go around in our will, by virtue of it, your acts become light and extend so much as to touch the divinity and draw more light of truth into the midst of creatures. Then, while I continued my round in everything that has been done in the supreme will, I arrived at everything that my celestial mama had done in it. And I said to her, Sovereign Queen, I come to hide my little love in the great sea of your love, my adoration toward God in the immense ocean of yours. I hide my thanksgivings in the sea of yours. I hide my supplications, my sighs, my tears and pains in the sea of yours, so that my sea of love and yours may be one. My adoration and yours may be one. My thanksgiving may acquire the vastness of your own boundaries. My supplications, tears, and pains may become one single sea with yours, so that I too may have my seas of love, of adoration, etc. Okay, I'm going to pause there. This is for everybody to listen. This is why you no longer need devotions. It ended right here. You want to know how to pray? She's teaching you how to pray. God is teaching you how to pray. That's an incredible prayer that she just did. And it encompassed her immaculate heart, 7 sorrows, which we know as millions of sorrows. It encompassed everything in that prayer. There is so much in these writings on how your prayer life will change. And it changed with what? With dropping our little sea, as Haynes had said, of our adoration into the great sea of the adoration of our Blessed Mother. Because nobody adored Jesus greater than the Blessed Mother. She held at the moment of from the moment that he was born till they removed him off the cross and placed him in her arms. Everything is in these writings.
Also, Mary,
Everything. is in these writings. Go ahead, Haynes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it could also be daunting to say a new person who may be listening, like, oh, I could never do a prayer like that. But all you have to do is read the volumes and your life becomes a prayer. And by you reading the volumes, God is working on you in your soul in order to help form the blanket of light that is being draped over all of humanity. I mean,
Right.
it's such a beautiful visual. And so not to worry that you can't come up with a creative prayer, because I do know that we have been conditioned with our prayerful lives in the
Buenos
past.
días.
So anyway,
Oye, ya hizo el cuadrito. Ya hizo el cuadrito.
Hello?
does anybody speak Spanish?
Pero bueno. ¿Ya se lo llevaron?
It's yeah.
And one of the things too that, you know, you find yourself as you continue down this path, maybe, you know, not all of us perhaps are as eloquent as how Louisa stated these things she wants to put in with Mary, but you also find yourself interacting with God, talking to God more, just on as you're driving down the road and you see something, right? And you thank him for it, or you say, hey, you know, I thank you that you put that here in front of me so that I could look off to the side and it was there. Or that's kind of a simple one, but anything, any time that you are interacting with God and you find yourself not doing it formally, you do it informally, that's prayer. You are praying with him and to him just through that interaction. So it doesn't have to be, you know, don't get caught up in something in eloquent words, because it's the intent of what you're trying to do with him. You're trying to form the bigger, better, total consuming relationship with God, and that's just a back and a forth all the time. You can get formal when you feel like you need to be formal, but don't forget to it's just like he's sitting there in the car waiting.
Right. Mel, are you there?
Trying to point stuff out. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. I think what people no. Don't miss the fact that the kingdom inside of you is not the same kingdom inside of me. Yes, it's the same Trinity, but I am not Mel. And Mel is not Mary. And I am not Louisa. And Louisa is not, Jane Doe. We're all individual, different creatures. That's how God created us to be, all different.
Right.
And also, we know that from reading these writings that who is praying inside of her? God is praying inside of her to teach us how to have this communicative relationship with God, as Mel just described. That this is the communicative relationship between Louisa and God the Father, and you launch off of this. You use this as your diving board. What questions do you come with what you just read? What caught you when you read about the sea of love? When I'm reading this, I'm thinking about, I immediately was drawn to her Immaculate Conception, and that the 3 C's of wisdom, power, and love. Her seed was dipped into the 3 C's of wisdom, power, and love. And so Louisa's taken that knowledge and she's asking for her littleness be dipped into the seas of our Blessed Mother. But we know from the writings, Jesus said he's praying inside of Louisa. So he's teaching us how to pray, how to talk to him, the relationship he wants to have with us. But Mel, everybody listen, we're not going to talk the same way. We're not the same people. There's no way. We all have different experiences. And so that's what he wants. He wants us all to communicate with him by us. We have our own Jesus inside of us and our own Jesus outside of us. And therefore, he wants us to be us. But to use this as your diving board, this is not a rote prayer. This is a prayer that came from her soul, and it's teaching us how to do this, how to talk to God, how to pray, how the desire, right? You talk about desire. My daughter, I jumped ahead. I shouldn't have jumped ahead.
No, it's
Because
okay.
Good.
I'm reading and I should jump. Okay, it says, the seas of love, of adoration, etc. And just as your sovereign height impetrated the long for, okay, I forgot. Where did I stop at, guys?
You stop
Adoration, etc.
right there,
Cetera.
and yeah, after
Just finish
etc.
that sentence.
Okay, give me a minute. I have to
But
find
was
it.
it was there a voice coming in
Yeah, I
as you
heard
were
somebody else
talking
was
that wanted to
making a
maybe
comment.
make a comment?
Yeah, it sounded like somebody was
Yeah.
breaking through, but they were speaking Spanish, so I couldn't understand them.
No, this was after that.
Okay, I found it. I think maybe they were just off mute. And just as your sovereign height impetrated the longed for Redeemer with this, I too may present myself before the divine majesty with all these seas in order to ask, to beseech, to implore the kingdom of the supreme fiat. My queen mama, I must use your very life, your very seas of love and of graces to conquer it and make it concede its kingdom upon earth, just as you won over it to let the eternal word descend. Don't you want to help your little daughter and give me your seas to make me obtain that the kingdom, the supreme fiat, may come soon upon earth? Now, while I was doing and saying this, I thought to myself, my celestial mama did not occupy herself, nor did she have great interest in the kingdom of the supreme fiat, that it might come soon to reign upon earth. She had interest in the longed for Redeemer, and she obtained him. She did not occupy herself with the divine fiat, which was more necessary, and which was to put perfect order between creator and creature, while it was up to her as queen and mother to reconcile the human will and the divine, so that the divine might reign with its full triumph. Okay,
But she
that
was
is
making an assumption there.
just in that was so honest. And real, but it's a real relationship, like she's not scared. She's like asking, like you did. Anyways, I just, I'm gonna marvel at that. Okay. At that moment, my always lovable Jesus came out from within my interior, and all goodness told me, my daughter, the mission of my inseparable mama was for the longed for Redeemer, and she accomplished it perfectly. However, you must know that everything that both she and I did, its substance, its source and primary cause, was the kingdom of my will. However, since redemption was necessary in order for it to come, though in our interior acts there was the kingdom of the fiat. On the outside, we were all intent and occupied with the kingdom of redemption. On the other hand, your mission is exclusively for the kingdom of the supreme will, and everything that the sovereign queen and I did is at your disposal to help you, to stand in for you, to give you access to the divine majesty in order to impetrate and ask incessantly for the coming of the kingdom of the eternal fiat. Okay, I'm going to pause there. So this is what I said in the beginning. They didn't live the sacramental life of Christ or the virtues. They lived the divine life. And he said it was on the inside that they were living the divine life. And everything they did was incessantly calling down the kingdom. And therefore, we on the inside, everything that we are doing is calling down the kingdom. We'll never stop calling down the kingdom.
Mary, I have a question. I'm thinking of the Holy Family in that. So Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were living the divine. Where it's Joseph also living in this?
I do not know if he was
community?
generating I do not know if he was generating or regenerating divine lives. I can't answer that.
No,
Louisa was the first one born of common stock to generate and regenerate divine lives. But if some special grace was given to Saint Joseph that we don't know of, I don't know.
yeah,
But
I'm
he
wondering if
lived,
there's-
Jesus said he lived in the presence of the divine will. So
Okay.
he was doing, I can't, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
I don't either.
Part of you wants to say yes because it's Saint Joseph.
Right.
Saint Joseph was we marvel at, I keep using that word. We look at Abraham who was asked to sacrifice his son Isaac, and he became the father of faith because he did it. Joseph was well aware that Mary was a virgin and that Christ was the son of the Holy Spirit and Mary, and that his life was going to be sacrificed for all humanity. There is a lot we do not know on what God did with Joseph's sacrifice. And we don't even really talk about Joseph's sacrifice. And then the fact that he died, knowing that he wasn't going to be there with Mary to help her during the time of the crucifixion of their son, and he wasn't going to be there for his Lord during the crucifixion. Our Joseph sacrificed a lot. And I don't think it's all been revealed yet, the gifts given to Joseph for that sacrifice. But may it not be lost on us, that was the three of them living in the divine will. What Joseph was given as in generating and regenerating divine lives, we do not have knowledge of.
Well, he could also be a metaphor for the Holy Spirit.
We don't know. But,
Right.
you know, I can't imagine that in heaven, Saint Joseph is outside the divine will because there is no separation in the Holy Family.
Right.
He must be inside the divine will.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I was
You
thinking
know,
too.
no divorce, no separation.
No.
We don't know. It's not explicit, but I just can't believe that Joseph is outside the divine will. In the
think
sun,
he-
outside.
It seems too that he goes to such specifics in the writings to talk about Louisa being the first of common stock that
Yes, but
you would, but there's the accidental, as we learned earlier, the accidental glory that those that are in heaven receive. He couldn't help but be receiving
you know,
that kind of
you
glory.
know, our blessed mother was freed from original sin before Jesus came.
Right.
So it's also possible that Saint Joseph
Yeah.
got the gift before Louisa.
It's
You
possible. Yeah, it's
understand?
possible. It's just not discussed in the writings is all.
You'd think it would
It's not discussed, but it's such, I can't imagine that Jesus doesn't live this with his father Joseph, not in the divine will. You know, it's
Yeah.
that's not possible to think. And it's possible for God that he got the gift before Louisa.
Absolutely possible.
Louisa is the first, but we have the same thing with our mother. You know, she was redeemed before Jesus
Yeah.
came. So for God, time is not so important.
Oh, that's true.
He can do this. He can do this. And I think that Saint Joseph is inside. We don't know from the writings, but you know, there is in the church teaching says that there is one. It's a union, the hypostatic union, the Holy Family, all who live very close with Jesus. You know, Holy Family, and it's God doesn't separate who he combined.
Yeah.
And
Very,
the-
very, very good. And I'm excited to learn more about Saint Joseph and what God gave to him, because he was God's representative on earth taking care of his son. I mean, and it's just because nothing's in scripture about Joseph, right? We've learned stuff from mystics, but I think there's going to be a huge unveiling of Saint Joseph and what we learned. All right. I'm going to move on. I think I'll start with the word in. In order for you to receive the good of the longed for Redeemer, you should have done your part. But am I at the right place?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. In order for you to receive the good of the longed for Redeemer, you should have done your part. But since at that time you were not there, my mama stood in for you. Now you must stand in for her. This is important. Now you must stand in for her, in her part, for the kingdom of my will. So the mama stood in for the daughter, and the daughter stands in for the mama. More so, since the Queen of Heaven was the first daughter of my will, and because she always lived within our boundaries, she formed her seeds of love, of graces, of adoration, of light. Now, since you are the second daughter of my will, what is hers is yours, because your mama keeps you as a birth from herself. And she enjoys that her daughter be inside her own seas in order to impetrate the kingdom of the divine fiat upon earth, so longed for. Therefore, see how abundantly your mama makes up for you, giving you all that is hers. Even more, she feels honored that her immense seas may serve you in order to impetrate a kingdom so holy. Afterwards, I was following in the divine will, that which Jesus has done in redemption, and my sweet Jesus coming back at it. My daughter, my redemption came as remedy for men, and therefore it serves as remedy, as medicine, as food for the sick, for the blind, for the mute, and for all kinds of sicknesses. And because they are sick, they do not enjoy nor receive all the strength it contains, all the remedies which I came to bring them for their good. The Eucharistic sacrament, which I left as food in order to give perfect health, many eat it over and over again, but they remain always sick. Poor food of my very life, hidden under the veils of the accidents of the bread. How many corrupted palates, how many indigestible stomachs that prevent man from enjoying the taste of my food and digesting all the strength of my sacramental life. So they remain sick, and because they are limbs feverish and evil, they take it with no appetite. This is why I long so much for the coming of the kingdom of the supreme fiat, because then everything I did in coming upon earth will serve as food for those who will enjoy perfect health. What is not the difference between a sick person who takes the same food and another who enjoys perfect health? Sorry. The sick who takes it without appetite, without taste, and uses it to sustain himself and not to die. The healthy one takes it with appetite, and because he enjoys it, he takes more and maintains himself strong and healthy. So what will not be my contentment in seeing that in the kingdom of my will, everything I did will no longer serve as food for the sick, but as food for the children of my kingdom, who will be all full of vigor and in perfect health. Even more, by possessing my will, hold on, they will possess my life, permanently present. Mel, will you continue?
You
I can't
okay?
stop.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you okay? Let me start.
Go ahead.
Even more, by possessing my will, they will possess my life, permanently present within them, just as the blessed in heaven possess it. Therefore, my will be the veil that will hide my life in them. The blessed possess me within themselves as their own life, because true happiness has its origin inside the soul. And so the happiness which they receive continuously by the divinity holds hands and exchanges the kiss with the happiness which they possess inside. This is why they are fully happy. In the same way, the soul who possesses my will have my perennial life within her, which will serve as her continuous food, not once a day like the food of my sacramental life. In fact, my will make a greater display and will not be content with giving itself once a day. Rather, it will give itself continuously because it knows that these have pure palates and strong stomachs to be able to enjoy and digest in every moment the strength, the light, the divine life, and the sacraments. My sacramental life will serve as food, as delight, as new happiness for the life of the supreme fiat which they will possess. The kingdom of my will be the true echo of the celestial fatherland, in which, while the blessed possess their God as their own life, they receive him into themselves also from the outside. Therefore, inside and outside of themselves, they possess divine life, and they receive divine life. What will not be my happiness in giving myself sacramentally to the children of the eternal fiat, and in finding my own life in them? Only then will my sacramental life have its complete fruit. And as the species are consumed, I will no longer have the sorrow of leaving my children without the food of my continuous life, because my will, more than sacramental accidents, will maintain its divine life always with its full possession. In the kingdom of my will, there will be neither foods nor communions that are interrupted, but perennial. And everything I did in redemption will no longer serve as remedy, but as delight, as joy, as happiness, and as beauty ever growing. Therefore, the triumph of the supreme fiat will give complete fruit to the kingdom of redemption. Fiat. And we've talked a lot, and I'll just kind of restate it again. The context of, in the redemptive fiat, sacraments are medicines and aids and helps. He's used those words many times. But in the context of the divine will, they're nourishment. And because the divine will it doesn't stop, it's eternal. Those nourishments are eternal. That's in essence what he's saying here, or in a way what he's saying here. And they move. It doesn't, and that's why we say you don't stop with the sacraments. It just means that the effect is different for a child in the divine will. It nourishes, as opposed to being a medicine or an aid.
Doesn't it sort of say that once reparation's been made, then they're no longer sick? So it's all fruit, I guess is what I heard. Maybe that's not much different from what you said.
Say that again.
Well, Jesus made the reparations, and we're doing the acts and the rounds to fulfill the acts that were supposed to be done.
Right.
But once that's accomplished, and you have the ultimate fiat, then everybody is receiving is gifts as opposed to making up for past.
Yeah, when the kingdom is reigning, then yes, when the kingdom is reigning, then everybody is operating in it.
Mhm.
And all is being given to God by all.
That's what
Right now, not all is being given to God. All is being given to God by few rather than by all. And the effects of repairing, redoing, and even regenerating is to take those acts that Jesus has put in suspension, and the fruits, as you call them, that are contained with those acts get released. And that's part of what helps bring more. You think about it, it's what helps to bring more and more folks that are, we read a little bit earlier, that are disposed to the divine will, to come to understand about the divine will, and creates that greater and greater and greater set of children that are operating and possessing. Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add before we go to the next reading?
I kind of see the when the new era is upon us, when everybody is in the divine will, we all will be living, breathing the sacrament. We will be the sacrament in a way. We will be fully merged with Christ. It just seems like it's the logical conclusion to what the Mass has been for us in redemption and living in the divine will, and that soon all of us will become the body and blood, soul and divinity of Christ as well. So I don't know if I'm verbalizing that, but I just think
You are verbalizing it, Hayes, but just say it. We all will transubstantiate.
yes.
That's always, the church has always taught that you would transubstantiate.
Yeah. So
you can't enter heaven unless you transubstantiate it into God's Son.
Right.
And to be able to live that here on earth is taken on them. So, like I said earlier, illumination, purgation is Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit and the Blessed Mother incarnate the Lord inside of you. He grows, and then Jesus leads you to the Father, who generates and regenerates.
Well,
so
and
we are now doing the generating and regenerating of God the Father, because it's the full Trinity reigning inside of you. So it is total transubstantiation. Exactly. And he tells us that in the writings. Yep.
But also we're going back to before time began with Adam. So we get the gift. To get the gift, Adam didn't need to go to Mass. Adam was part of God at that point. We didn't have redemption at that point.
Right. That's what he's saying, that Adam didn't need to be redeemed because he hadn't fallen yet. He had to come as redeemed. And there's a great writing, and I always talk about it. I need to find the date and memorize it. And it's where God wanted to destroy the world, and Jesus stood in front of him and showed him his wounds. And he says, I'm going to go redeem the world. And look, the children behind me are going to be as you created the children to be, living fully in your divine will. Yeah. So from all time. So I always say in the book of Revelation, the 24 elders, the world says, or I've always heard that was the 12 tribes and the 12 apostles. But it's truly the 24 hours of the Passion are the 24 elders, because they were there from all time.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
The Redeemer, because God knew that Adam was going to fall. So, yes, we transubstantiate, which is who we were always supposed to be. That's how he created us to be. But it's even before the fall of Adam, it's before the test, because you're being tested now. And Absolutely. You said yes. Mm-hmm. So you're a newborn. Immaculately conceived, choosing to do all your acts in the divine will instead of the human will, as Our Lady did. So therefore we can immerse our acts within her seas of love, power, and grace and adoration, because A, we have knowledge of it, and B, because we are her daughters. We are immaculately conceived. It's hard. These terms are hard to say, because they were always, when we lived in the sacramental life, they were always reserved for the Holy Family. And he is asking us and giving us the gift to live it now on earth. So using the words such as transubstantial and immaculate conception are words that you have to get used to saying, because they're the truth, but you have to get used to saying it, because people will almost reject it when they hear you say those words. Well, because they were always just reserved for the Holy Family.
But listen, lots of people rejected what Jesus was saying, right?
Absolutely.
When it's coming right out of his mouth.
Right.
I trust
Absolutely.
These writings. I trust them implicitly.
Yeah, as Mary mentioned, there's a variety of words that we don't need to be afraid of talking about, because Jesus wasn't afraid of talking about them in the writings and or in the Bible. And when you think of the context of, the return of the creature, the order, the place, and the purpose for which he was created, which is in the image and likeness, which means possessing God. that is what happens. And that's there's an understanding and a belief that and a knowledge, I mean, as he's described for us in these writings of what takes place.
And this is the answer to everybody's prayers. I mean, no sickness. They were, the writing was filled with the Eucharist is power food for the children of the divine will, and it is trying to nurture the others back to health. But when you have the divine will, you have no need for health because you're perfectly formed within the divine will.
As Haynes says, this Mary's sitting here with COVID, but Mary loves getting COVID. Your words change from a why to a thank you, right? What does that mean? It's like when I got the chills yesterday and my bones were cold, I was able to reflect on Jesus and how cold he was hanging on that cross with his flesh and blood just stripped from him and draining from him. So living in the divine will right now, that's repair, redo, reorder of our acts, that you don't ask why or how did this happen. It's thank you.
Mhm.
Everything just becomes a thank you, because everything was given to you out of love, and every act you do is love. So why would we ask why?
Mhm.
There in the first reading today, Genesis 49 and 50, and it's when Joseph is Jacob has passed, and Joseph his brothers now are kind of a little nervous about what he's going to do to him since dad has passed, and they make up that says Jacob, he says, Jacob begs you to forgive the criminal wrongdoing of your brothers who treated you so cruelly. Please therefore forgive the crime that we, the servants of your father's God, committed. But when they spoke these words to him, Joseph broke into tears, and his brothers proceeded to fling themselves down before him and said, "Let us be your slaves." But Joseph replied, "Have no fear. Can I take the place of God?" And here's the writing. "Even though you meant harm to me, God meant it for good, to achieve his present end, the survival of the many people." And just an understanding of how God works, and that what at times, either personally or what we observe, is could in the world be thought about harm and whatnot in God's world. There's it's because of love, and it's a meaning behind it, and part of what he's trying to accomplish. So that struck me as I was reading through that this morning. Our next reading is in volume 17. I think we have time to do one more. Yeah. Volume 17, October the 30th, 1924. October 30, 1924. Who would like to read this?
Which one was it? 19?
It's volume 17. October 30, 1924.
I can read this one.
Okay. Make it nice and easy.
Okay.
And then comment on it.
I'll leave that to you, John.
Okay.
October 30th, 1924. Why the angels are angels, and how they maintain themselves in the prime act in which they were created. I feel I cannot entrust my sorrowful secrets to the pen, nor express on paper what I feel within my martyred heart. Ah, yes, there is no martyrdom which can compare to the martyrdom of the privation of my sweet Jesus. The martyr is wounded and killed in his body, while the martyrdom of his privation wounds the soul. It lacerates her in her most intimate fibers. And what is worse is that it kills her without making her idle. To strike her continuously on the iron anvil.
Sorry, just it kills her without making her die. Did you say idle?
Yeah, it says it kills her without making her die.
Okay.
Yeah. To strike her continuously on the iron anvil of pain and of love. And as I pass over the pains I feel in my interior, because these are things which I cannot say, like one of the poorest beggars, I would like to beg everyone, the angels, the saints, my queen mama, the whole of creation, for a word, a little prayer to Jesus for me, so that, prayed by all, he may be moved to compassion for the little daughter of his will, and let her come back from the hard exile in which I find myself. Then I was thinking to myself about what had passed through my mind. That is, it seemed to me as if I had an angel, my angel near me, instead of Jesus. And I said to myself, and why the angel and not Jesus? At that moment, I felt him move in my interior, saying to me, my daughter, do you want to know why the angels are such? Because they maintain themselves beautiful and pure, just as they came out of my hands, because they have always remained still in that first act in which they were created. Therefore, being in the prime act of their existence, they remain in that single act of my will, which, not knowing succession of acts, does not change, nor decrease or increase, and contains within itself all possible imaginable goods. And the angels, maintaining themselves in that single act of my will through which I deliver them to the light, remain immutable, beautiful, and pure. They have lost nothing of their primary existence, and all their happiness is in willingly maintaining themselves in that single act of my will. They find everything in the circuit of my will, nor do they want, in order to be happy, anything other than my will, what my will administered to them. But do you know why there are different choirs of angels, one superior to the other? There are some which are closer to my throne. Do you know why? Because my will manifested itself in its act. To some with one single extension of knowledge and qualities, to some with two, to some with three, to some with four, and so on up to 9 choirs. And in each additional thing of the act of my will manifested, some became superior to others, and the first ones, more than the others, became able and more worthy to be close to my throne. Therefore, the more my will manifests itself in them, and they remain in it, the more they are raised, embellished, made happy, and superior to others. See then, however, everything is in my will, and from the ability of the angels to maintain themselves without ever leaving in that same will from which they came, and from the greater or lesser knowledge of the divine science of my supreme will, come the different choirs of angels, their distinct beauties, the different offices, and the whole celestial hierarchy.
Well, stop just there for a moment. We've talked about choirs, the different choirs and levels, if you want to use that word. Is that before? Is that new thinking to anybody that's watching us, so that might want to talk a little bit about that, or are we all good with that? Just wanted to pause if anybody had any questions on that.
It sounds like the angels can attain a higher choir in heaven. Whereas, from what I understand, I don't know if we don't. I mean, humans on earth, by us doing our acts and doing different things in the divine will, can raise to a different level. Anyway, that's the only thing.
From the earlier reading, you come to that because you come in with the thimble, or the using Mary's earlier thing, the thimble or the
Right.
or the
glass.
cup still full, but and that's that can be construed as maybe a different level, and then the accidental versus the possessed glory
Yeah,
that comes.
This isn't the angel, but on the thimble and the glass, you still get dewdrop.
Yeah,
And so those in heaven, if they're getting dewdrops, don't they change?
they are receiving it, but I don't think they change. I think
Right.
he's indicated that in writing. But
Mm,
that's the accidental glory. I can't, versus the other glory that we talked about earlier. And it also, is when you think of my father's house has many rooms, I come to prepare a room for you. It also,
I'm not saying it
Work
makes everybody
through
even,
that,
but
yeah.
I always, maybe I misconstrued what I was hearing.
No, I want to hear what you think, George.
Well, I remember this is half a thimble or better or less.
Don't worry about that.
But-
Ask your question, because everybody else has that question.
Well, maybe irrationally, I assumed that when the dewfall was falling, even at this time, that those that are receiving it are improving themselves.
I think that's more on earth, as I've always thought it.
And that is correct. They are improving themselves even in heaven, because that's the accidental glory.
Right.
So remember, we can redo acts. So we want to redo the acts. Tomorrow's Mount Carmel. So you can redo the acts of all the great Carmelite saints in heaven. And they receive accidental more glory by you redoing their acts. That's the accidental glory. Ours is because we're doing it here on earth. And the difference between us, well, many difference, but the main difference is we can suffer, and the souls in heaven cannot suffer. But we will suffer here on earth because we're still pilgrim souls. So we're still the militant army. So we still can suffer here on earth. And the souls in heaven are jealous of us because we can suffer. They're jealous, and not jealous. They use that word jealousy lightly. It's not like they're, the evil jealousy, but they know that they love to receive the accidental glory. So as St. Francis is telling you, don't read about me, pick up the volumes, because the more knowledge you attain, I get accidental glory for more knowledge, because it spreads out around the world, past, present, and future. Every knowledge you attain brings them through accidental glory, brings them to higher glory through the accidental glory. I don't know how to say that right. Accidentally, you're doing it because you're doing it. You're doing it as a pilgrim soul. The gift is given to you to live it, to bring everybody to the higher heavens. Oh, this is deep, George. Are you ready? We know of two heavens now. We know the heaven of Jesus is humanity, and the heaven of Jesus is divinity. And the heaven of Jesus' divinity was opened up through these knowledges given to Luisa Picaretta. The heaven of Jesus' humanity is what he opened up in his redemption. So you want to bring everybody to the womb of God. They receive it accidentally when they're in heaven, because they can't attain it here on earth. It's up to the souls here on earth to gain more knowledge, to bring everybody to the womb of God. The name of the book is to return the creature to the order, purpose, and place for which they were created. We were all created in the womb of God. That's where we want to return all souls, excluding nobody. Therefore, he tells us, don't look at the world or nothing. Keep your eyes focused on me and keep working. So
Go ahead, Mary, finish up.
well, the angels do not remember. Lucifer was the top angel. He was full of light because he was full of knowledge. Light means knowledge. He was the top dog. He had all the knowledge, but he wasn't going to succumb to a human being, and therefore he fell. And a third of the angels fell with him. But the angels, the minute that God created them, that was their place. So there's no movement of the angels, because then they would all go to the top, right? What angel wouldn't want to be at the throne of God? But they all have the role and the purpose. Like our guardian angel was destined to be our guardian angel before we were even conceived. And they say that our guardian angel, if you go to purgatory, your guardian angel goes with you. So your guardian angel is your guardian angel, but he's not, I don't think the angels look at each other as lesser or greater, right? I mean, if you think about it, our guardian angels are adoring God constantly. They're by the throne of God because you live in the divine will, which hosts God himself. So you think you're doing the greatest thing. Like, we used to think the greatest thing you could do for your guardian angel was go to adoration because you brought your guardian angel to the temple of God. Well, right now your guardian is like, you keep going. You keep going. I'm by the throne of God. So, this hierarchy, we know it in the legal sense, but God is he's not an attorney. He's not a legalistic God. He's God, and everything's love. So
Let me
did I say too much?
let me throw this out for thought and conversation. Don't think of glory and dewfall as the same. Think of them as separate. In the context of this, the dewfall is the fruit that is associated with the act. And once that act has been repaired, that dewfall is released. And that dewfall is used by the Trinity, past, present, and future on earth. But there's also the glory that God receives from that. And but that act being an act of in the divine will, being driven by the divine will versus driven by the human will. And that glory goes back to God and into heaven, and the souls that are there are receiving the effects of glory. I throw that out there as a visual, as a way that may help understand that a little bit better. But there's the act itself that creates that becomes imprinted with the seal of the Trinity, and by virtue of that being done with the divine will, that gives back to God what came from God on the same scale. But then there's the fruit of that act.
I didn't express it right. I wasn't saying anything in my mind that was contradicting any of that.
Yeah.
Except to the fact that whenever it falls, I didn't understand it to be just limited to those people here on earth in the divine will. It's to all.
Oh, he's right.
Yeah, no,
George,
there is.
you're right. George, you're right. Past, present, and future. And another word for dewfall is grace. Souls in heaven don't need grace, but you raise them up to higher glory whenever you redo their acts and you pour the graces upon the earth from the acts done. So you can go into the act of Abraham, since we mentioned him earlier, Abraham and him offering up his son, all those graces of faith. We can go into that act and pour all those graces upon all souls here present, but you can take it all the way from Adam fallen to the last soul, because that's the gift, because God is eternal, infinite, and perfect. So George, you are right. He tells us in another writing, you are the footstep of the minister, you're the voice of the preacher, I'm saying it wrong, but you guys know you're the act of the martyr. You're the one who gave him the grace to be able to do what they need to do in their times and circumstances, such as the Eucharist. And the reading that we just said gives you the graces to get through what you need to get through during your times and circumstances. You are given the graces to get people, all souls, the grace to get them through their circumstances of what they're going to be going through. When you pour down the graces of an Abraham, you're just raising him to more glory at this point, because he's already in the eternal heavens.
By the luck of God, we're available to be in the divine will, functioning now to be able to sacrifice, where those that were unfortunate to come too early. Maybe they were fortunate. I don't know, but anyway,
But it was just, that was the way he wanted. That was the way
God's
he wanted
plan,
it
but
to play
anyway.
out.
I realize that we're the ones that the burden falls on.
Yes, George, and I'm going to find that reading. I promise you this afternoon I'll find the reading and the date. But that's what Jesus did. God was going to destroy the world knowing that Adam was going to fall. He was going to wipe out the world. What's the point? The angels, they're lower than us. Everything is, creation wanted to turn in on itself. The sun was like, what's the purpose? They're less than us. And Jesus stood in front of God and showed him his wounds and said, I will go to redeem the world. And look, the children of light will come to be the children as you created them to be. It was because of us saying yes in the womb of God that God said yes to the earth, to the world to play out in time. That's that reading.
It's
Now,
either. all you
that
find-
is an incredible reading, but it's because God said, because we're eternal. Just as it said that Mary lived for us in her time, now we live for Mary in our time. It's just God's eternal. So he never saw this lapse. He never saw a gap in time. It's always been fulfilled. He's always looked down and saw all the acts redone, repaired, and reordered by all for all creatures. There's never been a time where he saw anybody less than a child of his. That's exact, George. That's your question, and that's a great question. It is because of you, George. Because George said yes in the womb of God. Because George said yes in the womb of God, and he gave his fiat in time that you are repairing, redoing, and reordering every single act from Adam fallen to the last one. And because you repair, redoing, reordering all acts, you are pouring down the graces upon all souls so that all souls can do what they need to do to not only call down the Redeemer, the prophets, and the patriarchs, but also our great saints. So it's not that you're just giving them higher glory now. They know it was because of you giving your yes in the womb of God and your fiat in time that they were able to do what they were able to do. You are the one who gave Saint Francis the ability to be Saint Francis, Saint Dominic, Saint John of the Cross, all the great saints, even the littlest unknown saint. It's because of you. And God saved the world because of the children who would be coming through the generation of light through Luisa Picaretta and these knowledges. We said yes in the womb of God, and therefore we are. So it's a great climax to our cynical. Our Redeemer came because our Blessed Mother said yes in the womb of God before her conception to be immaculately conceived, so that she would already have heaven inside of her, so that the Redeemer would have a place to come to be born in his humanity in her womb. And now he's telling you, because you gave your yes, the world has played out the way the world was supposed to play out.
So as we get back to the angels, to bring us back to the writing that we're talking about here, why don't we, because we were talking about the hierarchy of the angels, and I think if we read the rest of this paragraph, the next one, we'll kind of get some of that. The answers are always in the writings, right? Sometimes they're immediately upon us.
Go ahead.
If you knew what it means to have a greater knowledge of my will,
I think you gotta go back one, but yeah, therefore, I think you were therefore the more my will manifests itself. Halfway through that paragraph.
Just go ahead and restart there.
Yeah.
Okay, therefore, the more my will manifests itself in them and they remain in it, the more they are raised, embellished, made happy, and superior to others. See then how everything is in my will, and from the ability of the angels to maintain themselves without ever leaving, in that same will from which they came, and from the greater or lesser knowledge of the divine science of my supreme will, come the different choirs of angels, their distinct beauties, the different offices, and the whole celestial hierarchy. If you knew what it means to have a greater knowledge of my will, to do one more act in it, to maintain oneself and to act in that will of mine which is known, the level at which the creature is constituted, and the office, the beauty, the superiority of each creature. Oh, how much more would you appreciate the different knowledges which I manifested to you about my will. One more knowledge about my will raises the soul to such sublime height that the very angels remain stupefied and enraptured, and they profess me incessantly, holy, holy, holy. My will manifests itself and calls the things from nothing, forming beings. And manifests itself and embellishes. It manifests itself and raises one higher. It manifests itself and expands the divine life in the creature. It manifests itself and forms in her a new and unheard of portents. Therefore, from the many things I manifested to you about my will, you can understand what I want to do with you and how much I love you, and how your life must be a chain of continuous acts done in my will. If the creature, just like the angel, never left the prime act through which my will delivered her to the light, what order, what portents would not be seen upon earth. Therefore, my daughter, never go out of your origin in which my will created you, and may your prime act be always my will. After this, with my thought, I placed myself near my Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I prayed him to let me penetrate into that love with which he so much loved me. And my Jesus, moving again in the depth of my interior, told me, my daughter, enter into my love and never leave it. Run after it or stop in my own love in order to comprehend well how much I love the creature. Everything in me is love toward her. In creating this creature, the divinity intended to love her always. So in everything inside and outside of her, it was to run toward her with a continuous and incessant new act of love. Therefore, I can say that in every thought, gaze, word, breath, heartbeat, and in all the rest of the creature runs an act of eternal love. But if the divinity intended to love this creature always and in everything, it was because it wanted to receive in everything the return of the new and incessant love of the creature. It wanted to give love in order to receive love. It wanted to love to be loved in return. But it was not so. Not only did the creature not want to maintain this alternation of love or to respond to the echo of the love of her creator, but she rejected this love. She denied it and she offended it. At this affront, the divinity did not stop, but continued its new and incessant love toward the creature. And since the creature would not receive it, it filled heaven and earth with it, waiting for one who would take this love so as to receive love in return. In fact, when God decides and proposes, all adverse events do not change him, rather, he remains immutable in his immutability. And so this is why, moving on to another excess of my love, I, Word of the Father, came upon earth, and taking on a humanity, I gathered within myself all this love which filled heaven and earth, in order to return the divinity with as much love, for as much as it had given and was to give the creatures. And I constituted myself love of each thought, of each gaze, of each word, heartbeat, movement, and step of each creature. Therefore, my humanity was worked by the hands of the eternal love of my celestial Father, down to the most little fiber, in order to give me the capacity to enclose all the love that the divinity wanted to give to the creatures, to give to my humanity the love of all, and to constitute me love of each active creature. So each one of your thoughts is crowned by incessant acts of love. There is nothing inside and outside of you which is not surrounded by my repeated acts of love. This is why in this garden my humanity moans, pants, agonizes, feels crushed under the weight of so much love, because I love and am not loved in return. The pains of love are the most bitter ones, the most cruel. They are the pains without pity, more painful than my very passion. Oh, if they loved me, the weight of so much love would become light. When it is returned, love remains quenched and satisfied in the very love of the one who loves. But when it is not returned, it becomes crazy, delirious, and it feels the love it unleashed as being returned with an act of death. See then much more bitter and painful was the passion of my love. Because if in the passion they gave only one death, in the passion of love the ungrateful creatures made me suffer as many deaths for as many acts of love as came from me, for which I received no return. Therefore come, my daughter, to give me the return of so much love in my will, and you will find all this love as though an act. Make it your own, and together with me constitute yourself love of each active creature to give me the return of the love of all.
I think all of us have, in some point in time, in some form or fashion, have experienced rejected love and how difficult it was under whatever those circumstances were at the time. But he's talking about rejected love in all all acts that were not, that were done outside of the divine will, and how many deaths that is, and how, and the intensity in that big sea that we talked about of all those acts that we are dropping ourselves into.
What you're saying is he had a plan for us, life full of acts.
Perfect acts.
Perfect acts, and by our
It
failing,
gave him back what he
What he gave
issued
us.
out.
but when we fail those, each one of those, or what comes back at him as a pain or rejection.
Yeah. Because those acts were intended to be operated by the divine will, because when man was created, the light in the image and likeness, that likeness was what was operating those acts. And then when with the fall, the human will cannot return back even good, even the love of the human act, the true love of the human will returning back to God is not on the same scale as God returning that love back to himself from that act. And so while it is the intention is good from a human standpoint, it doesn't carry the same, I'll say, value as an act that's got the imprint of the divine will on it, which is the same as what God issued, and so it can give back in the same way. And now through the gift of this that we've received, we can take all those acts that did not rise to the level of a divine act and repair, redo, regenerate them, as well as generating our own after our own acts being generated in the divine will as well. And that gives him the Trinity, the return of that love that he's very directly talked about in this last part of that writing. And it's an equal love, it's justice then, because what is justice but equality? And because that love becomes equal, then there's no need for justice, because he's receiving in the same way that he issued. And that's all they ever really wanted, was recognition and love back for all the love that he took when he created.
Not my will, but thy will,
Exactly.
every moment.
Every moment, everything. And he taught, and in the prayer that Louisa, in the very first writing that we read today, the prayer that we talked a little bit about, that's a great prayer Mary commented on, and how it covered everything that we do when we are living, and that is, moving our hands, the beating of our heart, our lungs in and out, all of those are acts. Okay, well, this is a good place to call it a day, but before we do so, any other thoughts or comments that someone might like to put out, especially our Zoom folks? Anybody have anything else they'd like to add? Okay, well then let's call down the kingdom, and then we'll wind down the synod. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Descend, O supreme will, come to reign upon the earth. Descend, O supreme will, come to reign upon the earth. Descend, O supreme will, come to reign upon the earth. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God,
pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, and it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
May the will of the Father made known to the Son by the power of the Holy Spirit reign in me. Amen. Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, everybody on Zoom, for spending time with us. Great to see you and be with you again. Have a great
Thanks
week,
for a great meeting, everyone.
and we'll be back again next weekend.
Get well, Mary.
I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel better, Mayor.